Hello, people! Welcome to another edition of Dose of Drew here on Friday Night Knives. And tonight we have the Vosteed Corsair. This one's in Nitro V, which is not a bad steel. It's right up there in the 14C28N category. There's different arguments to be made for how that works, but let's get it. This is a pretty nice and contoured handles. But let's get some measurements first as we roll into it. We're talking about 3 3/8 tip to scale and tip to tail about 7 5/8 thereabouts. So it's cutting edge is about the same as about 3 3/8 or 3.5 if you go along it. Giving it some really nice proportions. It's just under that 3.5, which is nice for a lot of areas, even though some still won't work. And it gives good handle space. All right, a couple other things here. Zero that out. Under 3 ounces. That's with nested and skeletonized liners. It's got some holes drilled in there to do it. So 2.88, 2.9 ounces, just under 3 ounces. That's pretty light. It's not the lightest thing, but for something that's fully nested liners and all that stuff on something like a clutch lock instead of just up front, I think that's what Vosteed, or is it? It's a crossbar lock. So a crossbar locks often have to reduce weight, just have something up front, a la say the Benchmade style. All right, let's get some relativistic measurements in here. There it is next to the paramilitary 2. You can see it's just slightly, and you'll see a theme start out here. There it is next to the para 3. As you can see, it's closer to the para 3, but just slightly longer. Para 3 does give you quite a bit of hand space with that choil. And just to give you an idea here, there's what it looks like closed. So yeah, there's closed, very small. Para 3 is definitely something that those are some of the tallest. And we'll get this thing back out here so we can see it standard. Here, it's just a blur. See, very close in size to their blur. Has more cutting edge, similar handle space, and not just any leak, but a random leak. And once again, similar kind of lobed handle to the leak, similar handle length, more blade, and of course a larger blade, slightly larger handle and all that. The trade-off in this case becomes that the Corsair, though not significantly larger, is still larger in the pocket than the leak, though not by much. They managed to get it in a very, as you can see, just barely, in a very compact package, which is nice. And things that are close to side, Benchmade Bug Out, as mentioned earlier, very similar size to the Bug Out, which is a winner in size and everything else. And the Civivi Elementum. The Civivi Elementum is slightly smaller. You get the extra finger space, and it gives you a ton of hand space, but a significantly smaller blade. So it's right in the middle there in such a good way. And of course, as you can see next to my Wiener, though it is longer, mine is shaped better. All right. Let's get into the damn nice categories. That's design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, and if it's nicer, that's expectations and requests. So let's get into the design is good. It's a drop point, obviously, with a bit of a thumb ramp and a notch, which makes great use of the ergonomics for your finger to go up there. If you're going to go out, you can also choke up and get your finger way out there for, as I find my simulated surface here, you can get your finger way out there. There's also just enough of a sharpening choil. It's not really a finger choil, but there's just enough of a sharpening choil that your finger has a place to come to rest. There we go. in the pinch grip, which gives it a lot of flexibility. And of course, the Saber grip is very well. It's just barely 4 fingers for me. It's just a tiny bit more. So a lot of people might find this a bit small. The contoured scales definitely help fit it in hand, and the flat spot right there also helps if you want to choke up. And again, the pinch grip works nice. Reverse grip, as far as like this, not so. I mean, it's okay. It's definitely got a stop, and there's a good spot for your thumb. But the reverse grip for like opening an envelope or such definitely works good with lots of control. And it's tucked in. It's very compact. That's one thing it definitely has going for it, without a doubt, is its compactness. It really is something that's nice in the pocket. It tucks in. The thumb stud's super easy to deploy. The crossbar lock is very easy to, you can do it either way. The action is great. Running on bearings. Very, very nice. Ooh, we'll get one more measurement in here since for those who are watching videos in order, the last video, my little thing was running out of batteries, and it has been fixed up. So 1.116, 116 thousandths. That's approximately 3 millimeters. We'll go, in fact, just because I want to. Yeah, that's 3 millimeters with just a little bit shaved off. All right, so approximately 3 millimeter stock. And it is that is a very slim secondary bevel, and it is very thin behind the edge, making it very slicey. Just how thin? Right there. 11 thousandths behind the edge. 11 thousandths behind the edge. That is very, very slim behind the edge, and makes, with that high flat grind, it's not a full, there's a little bit of flat, right? There's a little bit of a non-ground primary bevel there. But that high flat grind, very thin behind the edge, very, very slicey. Absolutely. In fact, let me see if there's something I can't. This is even thick paper. Doesn't even hardly make noise. It's so... See if I can get the edge right. It's just super easy it's so slicey. That edge just bites with that thinness. It peels paper that's glued down off. It's very, very slicey, which is a good thing. That's one of the better qualities of this, the sheer sliciness of this drop point. Bit of a swedge, so if you're moving through softer materials, it gives a little breakaway. Very, very nice in that. And the aesthetics of it are actually pretty good, in my opinion. Very nice, very classy, very classic. I liked the green and the gold in this one. I thought that was a really nice color combo, especially with the black hardware. Definitely worked quite well, in my opinion. I thought that was nice. So the color, and it has multiple color schemes for different people's stuff, but it's a little bit, it kind of goes with the rest of their lineup and the color types that they offer. And the mechanics of it are absolutely on point. The engagement, like, you can fail it, but it's so easy to reverse flick, to just use anything you want. Right, it's very easily deployable and fidget friendly. Very easily deployable and fidget friendly. And now the one thing I can say is it's about at the $70 or $80 range. It's not the least expensive Vosteed out there, which is one of the things that I'll get to in a minute. But I think one of its noteworthy points is its contoured handles. It's lightweight, that very thin edge. It's not scanny grind, but it is so thin behind the edge that secondary bevel is just, let's see if I can there we go. That secondary bevel is just tiny. And that makes it super slicey. And it's a nice drop point, good in lots of different grips and for lots of different ADC tasks. It is, without a doubt, a package piercer, a shrink wrap slicer, a cardboard carver when it needs to, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. So it does all of that EDC stuff very, very nice. And I really do believe that's both its noteworthy point and its intended purpose. Some of the stuff I've already mentioned, very thin behind the edge, high flat grind. Bearings, nitro V steel, which is good, especially with such a thin edge. The toughness of that steel, while still maintaining decent edge retention, is going to come in handy. Having that tough a steel with that kind of thin edge is going to be very, very useful, and still maintain a little bit of good edge retention with that kind of geometry. So yeah, that's definitely there. The intended purpose, again, I think it's just Vosteed has a lot of them, and they tend to make EDC knives. They're not trying to go all for, you know, tactical or, you know, oh look, it's self-defense. Look, any knife is anything sharp is self-defense. If you're a John Wick fan, a pencil can be used for self-defense. So it just has to be sharp. So I don't think that's really the case. And they seem to go. The clean lines, just a couple of screws that help hold it in where it's necessary for the, excuse me, for the crossbar lock. It's very good. So I think both its noteworthy points and its intended purpose are essentially the same thing. It does a lot of that. Well, great action, will be good for a long time. Decent, tough steel with very thin blade geometry that makes it super slicey for everyday tasks. And that's really, really nice. The cost to value ratio, that's where this really falls. Not in the greater market, it's up there with most other things, but and this is one of the few times I will say this, in Vosteed's own lineup, this right here is the Corsair's biggest problem. The Raccoon in Vosteed's in 14C28N. It's $10 to $20 cheaper and does everything that the Corsair does. But in my opinion, it does it better. It's very thin behind the edge. It has a higher flat grind, similar blade stock. It has a slightly thicker handle with a little bit more room. And since it trails off, it gives a larger hand more space. It has a better front choil, and the action is just as good. This one's very well broken in. I really do enjoy this knife a lot. And that 14C28 is good. And it's cheaper than the Corsair. The single worst things between them is the square scales. The flat square scales. Not my favorite, but in the Raccoon, they managed to leverage it for really good ergonomics. And that's actually, to me, the Corsair fills the same role, but for more money. And for more money, you get slightly less slicey of a blade and contoured handles. And for me, that's just not worth it. You get an open back. There's not a backspacer. You just get, you know, not like the back here. You know, you get the openness of that. But to me, that's where this really falls. It's still overall a great value in the knife world. But if you're looking at Vosteed's own lineup and your heart's not set on the Corsair, there's not a lot of reason to purchase it over the Raccoon. Maybe if it was CPM 154, so you could expect a little bit more edge retention or there, so with that thin edge, get some more carbides in there to help with it, with that kind of geometry. Maybe something like that. And that would probably be something I roll right into the expectations and requests, because I expected this to be good. I have lots, as anyone follows this channel, there's giveaways on the Vosteed. I think Vosteed has done a fantastic job. They kind of dropped on the scene, and they have done a great job of making some really good EDC knives. Just a fantastic job of good standard EDC knives that are worth money. They're worth it. In fact, you know, it's enough to buy two. But the extra money for the Corsair, to me, it's hard to swallow. It's just not a better knife than the Raccoon. There's use cases where it might be. It's smaller, it's more comfortable. It's more saber grip, or if you kind of like, you know, skinning tasks or something like that. There is something to be said for its slightly more robust, shorter nature as far as certain types of tasks. But most of them aren't EDC stuff. And that's where I feel that it seems to be that its entire purpose, its reason for being, its strength, is general EDC tasks. And then it just isn't as well suited for them as other knives in Vosteed's lineup. Does that mean it's a bad knife? No. It's still in the price range. I believe this one's like 70 or 80 bucks. It's still in the price range of a lot of bargain knives, but many of them are putting like 154. If you go to, like, Kaiser is one of them that'll have, like, at this price point, it'll have 154 cm. Or some other steel that allows you to push a little bit into some, you know, more general abrasive edge holding, while offering a lot of the same. It's not as tough as, say, Nitro B or 14C28N, but it does have more carbides and can hold at similar Rockwell hardness. Can do a lot of other tasks while maintaining an edge. The Nitro V and 14C28N, and the Nitro V are just behind it. So it's not a huge amount, but it is enough that it could be worth the extra bit. Nitro V is tough. And if you like the looks of this over something like the Raccoon, isn't for everybody. It's not as, it's still compact, but it's not as compact as the Corsair. It's just a little bit taller, it's just a little bit longer, just a hair, just a little bit larger overall. And that's really, without having to compare it to any others, that's really, it's to me, its main competition. If I'm going to the Vosteed website and I'm looking at both of them, the Raccoon is just as good of a knife for less money. Arguably a better knife, depending on your use case, for less money. And that makes it hard to recommend the Corsair over the Raccoon. But it's still a great knife. Once again, if this speaks to you more than a Raccoon, this is still a great knife. But remember, your personal preference is going to cost you 15 or 20 bucks. So that's, if it's worth it to you, I mean, I understand. I do many larger purchases out of personal preference. For lots of different reasons. You know, if you're a knife nut and you're like, no, it's because it was cool, then you understand. And this is really what it's about. This is a cool knife. It's a good knife. It's contoured. It's comfortable in the hand. It's got a nice deep carry clip with just a little bit of pop-up on the back. It doesn't quite go full all the way. There's just enough to let you know there's something in your pocket, as well as give you just a little bit of grip if you're trying to pull it this way, right? You gotta put your finger behind it and then you pull it out of your pocket. So there's lots to be said for it. And that's really, really its strong. Because, I mean, yeah, I would love to see a little bit higher end. Instead of going for the 70 or 80 with a Nitro V, get something like S35VN in this and go for that $100 or so range. Go up a little bit so that, I mean, honestly, that's what I would love to see on something like the Raccoon. It's hard to say. I would like to see it with a higher price point, but just upgraded materials would be nice, just to round out a collection. But that's where I think the Corsair should be. It would, to put something like CPM 154, get a powder metallurgy steel in there, or you know, S35VN is another one that can go at those price range, and bump it up just a little bit in price to get that benefit of that steel, so it's not directly competing with the Raccoon and losing. In my opinion, that would be the request I would have, is make this a mid-tier knife, and keep the Raccoon at its low price point with all of its glory and all of its benefits, and then bring the Corsair up just a level. It's a great knife that, unfortunately, if it was the same price, it would be just as recommendable. But with it being at a higher price, and there's not even like a plug that comes with it, like on the Raccoon. Like the Raccoon has a plug on the other side. Like there's not even something to do that. So to me, excuse me, to me, it just doesn't have the same value as the Raccoon. It has a great design. The aesthetics are out there. And that's really the thing. If the design and aesthetics speak to you more than the Raccoon and it's worth it to you, this is a good enough knife to buy. It's very recommendable. The mechanics are great. It's intended purpose is an EDC knife, and it's noteworthy in how well it performs that tasks. Its cost to value ratio is just lower than other knives in its line, in Vosteed's lineup. And that would be the request, is to more separate this from things like the Raccoon or some of the cheaper ones, and put it up in like that 99 or 109, somewhere between 100 and 110 maybe. with S35VN, somewhere up along the same lines as, say, the mini nightshade. You get maybe a little bit more money than that, but $99 for that, it's not a lot more material and similar costs. And you don't even have to do carbon fiber, but that would be nice too. That would be the biggest request, and that's sort of a bit. This is really actually about. I'm going to do an 80. It's very good all by itself. It's just overshadowed. If the raccoon disappeared, this score would actually go up. It would be closer to the raccoon score. It's just not as good on the cost to value, which the raccoon is killing right now. But yeah, this is the problem with the Corsair, is that it's kind of a great knife that's overshadowed by its corporate siblings in that sense. It's a great knife that just, if it only didn't have an even better knife that was cheaper, or an absolutely fantastic knife that was better materials and only slightly more expensive, there's just so much that comes from it that it's really hard to get. It's not that it's not recommendable. It's just I would recommend the raccoon over it for the price value. Nitro V and 14C28N are not different enough to warrant that big of a price difference. So it really just comes down to that. So there you guys go. Recommendable, but second fiddle to the raccoon when it comes to other Vosteed knives. I'm not comparing it to any others, just Vosteeds. Can do a shootout if you guys like, but I can tell you right now, the raccoon is a better value than the Corsair. And that's mostly because it's almost the same materials. It's basically the same materials for less money, and better sliciness and all sorts of other stuff that goes along with it. So with that, you guys, I'm going to wrap this up. About 80 on the 0 to 100 score. Very good knife, outshined by its brother, the raccoon. And really, it's a good knife that just suffers from an identity problem of where it's not exactly the cheapest, but they still up the cost. So personally, I think this should be given a powder metallurgy steel and upgraded up to that $90 to $110 range so that you can get better steel and something different from what's out there. That's really what RWL 34, CPM 154, ATS 34, something like that in like the $90 range, just a little bit more money would, and the particle metallurgy instead of the 154 CM with a good heat treat. And now you have a reason to buy this knife instead of the raccoon. So that's my take on the Corsair. As always, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like. Be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew. You guys have a great rest of your night.